By the time you finish this intro, Elon Musk may have made another $100,000. That's more than many Americans earn in an entire year, and it may happen before you even decide whether this video is worth watching. To catch his net worth on an average salary, you would need to work non-stop for about 13 million years. That is roughly 40 times longer than modern humans have existed. Sounds unbeatable, right? Not exactly. Because before we crown anyone as the richest person in history, we have to ask a harder question. What does rich even mean? Are we talking about cash, gold, land, companies? Or something much bigger, control over an entire empire? Because if we rewind history, a king, a banker, a conqueror, maybe even an emperor, the kind of people who would make Elon Musk look broke. So who was actually the richest person in history? Let's open the history books, follow the money, and find out who has the strongest claim to the title. Pablo Escobar was not the richest person ever, but if we are talking about physical cash, he might be the most ridiculous case in history. At his peak, Escobar's empire was reportedly pulling in hundreds of millions of dollars a week. Not stocks, not company valuation, actual cash, stacked in rooms, hidden in walls, and buried in secret locations. He reportedly spent around $2,500 a month just on rubber bands to bundle the bills. And because he had too much cash to store properly, around $2.1 billion a year was reportedly lost to humidity, mold, and rats. Most people worry about rent. Escobar had to worry about rodents eating his fortune. The catch is, this money came from drugs, violence, corruption, and human suffering. So Escobar wins one category only, the most insane pile of dirty cash. Cash is dramatic, yet it is weak. It can rot. Real lasting wealth needs something stronger, like steel. Andrew Carnegie was the American dream on steroids, with a very complicated footnote. He was born poor in Scotland, came to the United States with almost nothing, worked as a child, and built a steel empire that literally held America together. Railroads, bridges, factories, skyscrapers, they all needed Carnegie steel. Then came the money explosion. In 1901, Carnegie sold Carnegie Steel to J.P. Morgan for about $480 million. Carnegie's personal share was roughly $225 million, nearly half the entire U.S. federal budget at the time. But Carnegie's legacy was not simple. He built wealth in an age of brutal labor conflict and ruthless competition. Then he spent much of his later life giving it away, funding thousands of libraries, schools, universities, and cultural institutions. His most famous belief was simple: the man who dies rich dies disgraced. Carnegie proved that modern wealth did not need a crown. It could come from industry. But steel was only one pillar of the industrial age. Another was oil, and nobody played that game harder than John D. Rockefeller. John D. Rockefeller did not just sell oil. He built the blueprint for the modern corporation. Standard Oil controlled refining, transportation, pricing, and distribution. By the 1880s, it controlled around 90% of America's oil refining. You weren't competing in the market, you were the market. And that is what makes Rockefeller different from a modern billionaire like Elon Musk. Musk can lose billions if a stock falls. Rockefeller owned the pipes, the refineries, the routes, and the pricing power behind an entire industry. Eventually, the US government forced Standard Oil to break apart into more than 30 companies. That was supposed to weaken him. Instead, it became the greatest power move of his life. Rockefeller still owned a massive stake. As Exxon, Mobil, Chevron, and others grew, he became America's first billionaire. At his peak, Rockefeller was worth around 2% of the entire US economy. Now, 2% may sound small until you remember we are talking about the whole country. If one person owned 2% of today's US economy, that would be roughly $500 billion. So yes, Elon Musk is insanely rich. Rockefeller, though, did something even crazier. He owned a bigger slice of America than almost any private citizen in modern history. That power came from oil and corporations. Centuries earlier, Jacob Fugger found an even cleaner power move. Make kings, popes, and emperors owe you money. Jacob Fugger should be way more famous. He wasn't a king or emperor, he was their banker. Born into a wealthy German merchant family in the 1400s, Fugger expanded into banking, mining, and trade. Eventually, kings, popes, and emperors came to him for loans. And when Emperor Charles V was slow to repay his debts, Fugger reportedly sent him a letter reminding him that without Fugger's money, he might not have gotten the crown in the first place. That is a power move. Fugger's money also reached deep into the Catholic Church. Some of that money helped finance church projects and the sale of indulgences, basically payments people were told could reduce punishment for sin. That controversy helped push Martin Luther into open rebellion against the church, helping trigger the Protestant Reformation, one of the biggest religious earthquakes in European history. And his strangest legacy? The Fuggerei, a housing complex in Augsburg founded in 5021. People still live there today, paying about 88 cents a year in rent, plus prayers for the Fugger family. 500 years later, his affordable housing is still beating the modern rental market. Fugger proved the lender can stand above the crown. And once banking became that powerful, one family figured out how to turn it into a global network. Before phones, television, or the internet, the Rothschilds understood something that still runs modern finance. Information can be worth as much as money. Mayor Amschel Rothschild placed his 5 sons in key European cities and built a private network of couriers and codes that moved news faster than many governments could. The famous and heavily mythologized example is Waterloo. After Napoleon was defeated, Nathan Rothschild in London reportedly received the news early through the family network. Details of the story are debated, but the core idea still matters. In finance, speed can be worth a fortune. The Rothschilds probably should not win this contest, because this was not one person's fortune, but they belong here because they showed that information itself could become a form of wealth. Money and information are still only part of the story. Some fortunes were not measured in bank accounts at all, they were measured in land. Genghis Khan didn't measure wealth in gold, stocks, or bank accounts. His fortune was the map. The Mongol Empire became the largest contiguous land empire ever, stretching across nearly 20% of Earth's land. It connected East and West through trade, tribute, fear, and military dominance. If Rockefeller controlled an industry, Genghis controlled the roads between civilizations. That meant merchants, armies, goods, taxes, messengers, and entire cultures moved through territory shaped by Mongol power. But Genghis Khan did not live like some jewel-covered cartoon king. A lot of his power came from sharing loot with soldiers and commanders. That kept the army loyal and made the empire terrifyingly effective. So if we're counting bank accounts, Genghis loses immediately. But if we're counting command over land, tribute, trade routes, and human movement, he becomes impossible to ignore. And now we get to the man who didn't just have gold, he had so much of it that giving it away became an economic problem. Mansa Musa didn't just go on pilgrimage, he staged the most expensive flex in history. In 3024, the ruler of Mali traveled to Mecca with 80 camels, each carrying roughly 140 kilograms of gold. That is over 11,000 kilograms of gold crossing the desert. And he gave away so much in Cairo that the price of gold crashed. The local economy took about 12 years to recover. That is the kind of generosity that makes economists cry. Most billionaires donate money and get their name on a building. Mansa Musa donated money and caused inflation. Estimating his exact net worth is nearly impossible, but Mali controlled some of the most important gold and salt trade routes in the world. Musa had access to the resource everyone wanted, and he displayed it so dramatically that he became a legend. If wealth is gold, Mansa Musa may be the strongest candidate. But there's one problem with calling Mansa Musa the richest. Gold is still just a thing. The next man controlled the system that decided who got things in the first place. Augustus Caesar may be the most terrifying answer here. After defeating Mark Antony and Cleopatra, he became the first emperor of Rome. One of Augustus Caesar's greatest prizes was Egypt, a kingdom overflowing with grain, wealth, and the trade routes that helped feed and stabilize Rome itself. And beyond Egypt stood something even larger: the imperial treasury, conquered provinces, powerful armies, and the full economic engine of the Roman Empire. At some point, calling him rich feels too small. Any number this old is basically an educated guess, not a bank statement. But even with that warning, Augustus belongs near the top because his wealth was tied to control of the Roman state itself. Some estimates say he personally controlled around 20% of the Roman economy, the modern equivalent of roughly $5 trillion. $5 trillion. That is about 10 times Elon Musk's fortune at his highest publicly reported levels. But Augustus was not rich like Elon. He did not own shares. He ruled the machine that produced wealth. So, if we measure personal, sellable wealth, Augustus is hard to count. But if we measure economic control, he might be the strongest answer in history. And that brings us to the strangest kind of wealth in the entire video: money that can disappear without a single coin moving. Elon Musk is the richest person of the modern age, because modern wealth is built on belief. A Roman emperor could point to the empire itself. Mansa Musa could point to gold. Rockefeller could point to the oil powering the modern world. Musk points to future expectations: rockets, robots, AI, self-driving cars, Mars, and whatever investors believe those things might become. Tesla, SpaceX, XAI, Neuralink, billions of dollars flowing toward a vision people believe has not fully arrived yet. That is what makes modern wealth so strange. A bad harvest could hurt Augustus, a lost war could break Genghis Khan, but Elon Musk can gain or lose billions in a single day based on investor confidence. To ancient rulers, that would sound absurd. But in today's world, belief itself has become an asset, and by that standard, Elon Musk may be the clearest symbol of modern wealth ever created. Still, is he the richest person in all of history? That depends on what kind of rich you count. Every age defines wealth differently. Sometimes wealth meant gold. Sometimes it meant land. Sometimes it meant controlling trade, debt, oil, armies, or entire economies. Every era created its own version of power. But here is the comforting truth. No matter how rich any of them were, none of them got to watch a detailed YouTube breakdown like the one you just watched. So honestly, who is really winning? Now I want to hear your answer. Who was truly the richest person in history? Elon Musk, Augustus Caesar, Mansa Musa, Rockefeller, Genghis Khan, Jacob Fugger, or someone I missed? Drop your pick in the comments, because this one is absolutely going to start a fight. And if you enjoyed this video, hit like, subscribe, and stick around, because history gets a lot weirder when you stop reading it like a textbook.